Three, two, still the spinning wheel. Um, and we're live.
Hi, everybody. I am so excited for our Facebook Live event today. And I'm extra excited because we have my sister here with us. This is Michaela. She is a psychotherapist. She's a mom of three, and she's got a lot of great stuff to share with us today. But just to begin, I'm Janine. I'm one half of Empowered DLD. I'm a speech language pathologist in Canada. And Kamisha Russell, who is the other half of Empowered DLD. She's a teacher and she is going to be manning the chat. So if you have questions during this event, feel free to type them in the comments. I think it's actually called the comments, and she will be feeding those to us. Hopefully, we'll have a chance to get to them. But we're so glad that each one of you is here because this is such an important topic. So, Michaela, to begin with, are you comfortable sharing a bit about yourself, your kids, and what you've noticed on your journey?
Yeah. I have three kids. They are 6, 4, and 1. And my oldest son, we started to notice he was behind with his speech. At the regular well baby checkups, they would ask, does he have 20 words now? Does he have 30 words? And I was always kind of pushing it, thinking, yeah, he's fine at the start. And then I really was noticing that just no, he wasn't at the point that the doctors wanted to see him at with his language development. He wasn't talking much. So we went through the process of trying to get him help. It was really hard. Um, and his language progress was really, really slow. So that was really hard. My daughter, also my 4-year-old, has a different kind of disorder, I guess. She was an early talker, but now that she started school, she's struggling with some anxiety at school, and she has selective mutism. She hasn't spoken a word at school since starting in September. So what are we, 9 months in? we're
Mm.
we're waiting for that first word. Um, I am also a psychotherapist. I don't work with kids. I work with adults. But that, you know, um, has helped me in my journey with my kids and some of their struggles for sure.
Because you mentioned it was hard having this experience with your oldest child and also I'm sure with your middle child too. Can you tell us about how that was difficult for you personally as a parent? Because I think that's something that's often missing in this space with DLD. We talk about how to help the child, we talk about strategies for the child, but oftentimes the parent's experience isn't acknowledged or we don't have enough space dedicated to talking about the emotional impact on the parent raising a child with a communication challenge, whether it's DLD or selective mutism or a speech sound disorder, whatever it is, but specifically for DLD because it's so unknown, it can just take parents out. They feel often so alone, so confused, so fearful for the future. There's often not supports in place specifically for them. So, from your lens of both a parent who's in this, who's gone through this and is continuing to navigate this space, and your lens as a psychotherapist, can you tell us about how that felt for you?
Yeah, it's a really good point because we're all here to help our kids and we can't help them if we're not well. And we are their advocates. They aren't able to advocate for themselves. So it is really hard. I think um you just want me to speak to that, or sorry, what was the specific question? Just speak
Yeah,
to
just speak to that and how it's impacted you personally or any parents maybe that you've worked with. What's the impact on the parent themselves when they're trying to help their child with this, but
yeah.
they're feeling so lost and confused themselves?
Yeah, I think it brings up a lot of emotions, as you want. I noticed for myself as I was going to those doctor's appointments, and I was realizing I'm kind of pushing it, answering yes to this question. He's not saying 20 words, but he's maybe saying, some words, and I want to say yes. So, and I don't want
Mhm.
to think that, yes, there's a problem. And as the problem became more and more unavoidable for me to look at, you notice lots of feelings coming up. I noticed for myself, um, it was scary. You have anxiety. You want to think your baby is in the average for most things. You don't want to think of them struggling. So yeah, I think I felt some fear and I felt worry, and I think there's also a sense of you don't necessarily always know what to do. So there's that pressure and that stress for how do I help them. And I think some people, I certainly felt this at times, internalize what have I done wrong, or I didn't talk to him enough, or I didn't enrich his vocabulary enough. I didn't read to him enough. Whatever it may be. So I think it brings up lots of feelings about what did I do wrong
Mhm.
at first. I think it also brings up a lot of once you're in it and you're trying to advocate and you're trying to make the doctor's appointments and the SLP appointments and the audiology appointments and all the things you have to go through. Um, that can be anxiety inducing and stressful, and it's hard on the child. So you're fully trying to be present with the child, and it's easy to forget yourself. It's easy to forget and or just not have time to notice what you're feeling and to uh, share those feelings with other people, your support network or even your partner. So that's another thing. I think um, in preparation for today, I was looking back at some videos of my son and at different intervals in his development, in his language development, and the amount of interpreting I had to do constantly. And I don't have to do that now, so um, that's really nice. But for many, many years, his speech was not easy to understand. It was not grammatically at all correct.
Mhm.
And it was, I'm reading between the lines of the few words he's putting together when he's 3.5, 4. And just it's constant. So I was looking at videos that I'm taking of just me and my kids, and I'm still doing it. Even when there's nobody else there, I'm interpreting because he's looking at me to interpret. He's making sure that I understand because otherwise he knows that he's not being understood. So taking that on was also exhausting. It's somehow physically exhausting and emotionally exhausting and mentally exhausting. And it's something I think as a primary caregiver that you take on a lot more than a partner that
Mhm.
is around and maybe helpful, but not the primary caregiver. Um, because it becomes second nature, even though it's pulling from you, and it's hard to keep giving out of an empty cup, keep pouring out of an empty cup.
Yeah, that's such an important point, and I think it's not talked about enough. So I appreciate you sharing that. So what would you say then parents can do when they are struggling with feelings of guilt, when they are so exhausted, when they feel like this burden on them is so heavy? How can they make space for those hard feelings, so they don't get stuck in feeling like they're failing their child?
Um, that's a great question. I think there's lots of things you can do, and different things fit for different people.
Mhm.
I think um, having a support network that you can turn to is really helpful, which is one reason why I think uh, DLD what's your name? The name DLD and
Empowered DLD.
Empowered DLD. Was it DLD and me before?
No, that's a different organization, which
Oh,
we've
it's
worked with. Yes. It's a wonderful organization too. They're great.
oh, sorry.
Mhm. No worries.
Empowered DLD. The communities like this, I think, are so important and helpful because you can feel heard and feel understood, and it's normalized, and it's um, the give and take of being part of a community. Once you get your feet under you, you're asking questions to other parents and the experts, and then you can answer questions too when new group members come in, and that helps put you in a position of feeling like you're giving and taking. And that communities like that are so helpful and important.
Mm.
So communities like this, and turning to your support network in your personal life, um, and if there's anything in your vicinity that SLP community. I don't know if SLPs do groups, but that would be a smart thing to do if they
Mhm.
if they don't. We certainly never got into, well, we got onto a wait list for one, and then by the time we got to the front of the wait list, we needed a reassessment and we no longer qualified for the group. So then we needed to go on a new wait list.
I remember
It was a
that
thing.
journey. Yeah, I remember
Yes.
that.
But what else can you do when more difficult feelings come up, or if you start to feel like you're taking on too much, or you're internalizing um, guilt about how your child's doing? I think getting help yourself, if there's someone you need to talk to, a therapist, or a close friend, if you can articulate it and say it out loud and notice that it's there and be present with those feelings, then that's really important.
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
and finding strategies to not stay stuck in it, and that can look different for different people. If you can start to reframe some of the messages that you're telling yourself, or offer alternative thoughts, that can really help. And just noticing, being uh, mindful of when those thoughts are coming up, when you those are the messages, the meaning that you're making, the messages you're telling yourself.
Can I
That-
just jump in for a second?
yeah.
So I think that's really important. Can you give an example of maybe an unhelpful thought and then how somebody could go about reframing that? What would that look like with their internal dialogue?
There's different strategies.
Mhm.
If you can just sit down and write out a few alternative thoughts or different meaning makings that fit for you, one or two. Write
Mhm.
them, put them on your bathroom mirror, put them in your wallet, put them on your phone.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I think I mean a specific one. Like, let's say the person keeps telling themselves, this is my fault because I let my child watch too much TV, or I didn't read enough. This is all my fault. This is all my fault. What kinds of things could they say to themselves instead? Like, is there a specific example there, maybe? How they could
oh,
reframe?
yeah, yeah. If you notice you're telling yourself this is my fault,
Mhm.
what well, let me ask myself what would fit for me instead. I'm doing my best
Mhm.
to help my child. You want it to be short, so it's easy to offer the reframe to yourself. I'm doing my best. My child is a separate person with their own struggles.
Mhm.
Um, and I can help them with that. Something that's empowering, instead of blaming. That I what is within your control to do. I can help them with their struggle. Is maybe an easier one. I can help them with their struggle, because you're kind of the unwritten message in that one is it's their struggle. It's not something you did wrong. This is something they're struggling with, and it's theirs. And your job is, as the parent, is to help them.
Mhm.
So something like that. There's also, you can find a thought record online. I'm sure you could look that up, and that can be a helpful tool. Some people like paperwork, or
Mhm.
tracking. Some people really, really respond to that. Not everybody. But that can be another helpful one where you really break it down. You start with, this is the unhelpful thought. This is when I notice it coming up, and you go through the process of trying to help yourself track so that you can offer the alternative thought.
That's so good. That's so good. I know personally, I've done a bit of that myself. I've also gone to speak to a psychotherapist about my own journey parenting my son with dyslexia.
Mm.
And I did think to myself, I'm like, how could I not have known this was what was going on? Or sometimes I got frustrated with him and I spoke to him sharply because I thought he wasn't trying. And now I feel so bad that he actually didn't have the capacity to do what I was asking him to do. And I've really done some work on myself thinking, wow, I could stay stuck in that and ruminate on things that I regret or things I could have handled better in the past, but that's not going to help my son. That's not going to help me. That's not going to help anyone in our family. So one thing I've told myself is today is a new day. What can I do to help him today and not get stuck in the past and what I could have done differently in the past. So I've even told parents before, we all have, or almost all of us have limited budgets. And so it is okay to say for this period of time, for this 3 months or whatever it is, I'm actually going to use the money I have to do therapy for myself instead of therapy for my child because I can't effectively help them and parent them if I'm not okay. And so I just want to mention that too because the challenge is so great for so many parents. I was just in a meeting last night actually with a child that I work with who was transitioning from elementary school to middle school. And there were so many challenges that were brought up. This child is struggling with this and struggling with that. And the parent just hid their face and cried. And I felt so sad thinking there's no support for this parent. Like it is so important to recognize these are hard meetings to be in. And how do you just then go
Yeah.
recover and cook dinner and do all the things you need to do as a parent if you don't take care of yourself? So, just thought that I would mention that too. And I think that therapy can be so important for parents.
Yeah, and I'll just say, if you notice thoughts like that, like what it, um, like you said earlier, if, oh, I shouldn't have behaved this way, or I shouldn't have blamed him, or I've gotten angry when he couldn't do it.
Hmm.
I think, and you're right, we can ruminate about those things. I've certainly had those moments too.
Hmm.
And I think noticing them is the best thing you can do, because if you start to notice that's the case, then you can work on it and work through it next time. So those are the moments that I think are so important to use with your kids, because that's a real life scenario that they're going to come across. So if you can do the work to manage your feelings, notice that they're there, and I like to even sometimes say treat feelings like data. It's telling you something about what's going on. So if you notice you're feeling frustrated, what's the data there? What's happening? And can you use it to work with your child and say, I notice I'm feeling really frustrated. I'm going to, you don't need to say this part, but I'm going to model what to do. I'm going
Hmm.
to take a minute. I'm going to close my eyes. Why don't you do it with me? And we'll take 10 deep breaths in. You can count on your fingers to 10 and get your child to do it with you. And you're teaching them the skills of what to do when you feel frustrated. You're naming the emotion and what to do with it. And that's a really important tool that, especially a child with DLD who probably is going to get really frustrated about um, communicating, will really benefit from. And I think also you're teaching them that it's okay for people to have big, or even sometimes we call them negative feelings around them, even about some of the things they're doing, that they can tolerate that. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with them. They don't have to internalize the shame of that, but they can start to tolerate that other people have hard feelings, and they don't have to run away from that. They don't have to internalize the shame. It's okay.
Yeah, that is beautiful. That is so beautiful. And it's actually something that we often mention in our community too, is modeling that for kids and showing them how you cope with those feelings, how you get yourself regulated. And I love what you mentioned about inviting them in so that you guys can regulate together. It's so beautiful. And another thing I've found helpful too is apologizing. So I've said to my
Yeah.
son, I'm sorry that I made a mistake there. Will you forgive me? And he just puts out his arms and we have a big hug and it's a beautiful thing. And I think that he's learning that he can apologize too when there's a mistake and that families are safe. We do make mistakes, but
Mhm.
we always come back together and we will always love each other and be there for each other. So.
That's such good modeling, and it's a really good role reversal. You're empowering by apologizing. You're empowering him to be in the position of forgiver,
Mhm.
um, and that um, he matters. It matters to you if you've done something wrong in relationship with him. So I think that both of the modeling is great and helpful, and the empowering and the respect behind
Mm, mm. Yeah, well, I think you and I are in a great position because we have each other as sisters. So we've
that.
talked through a number of these things
Yeah.
about how do you help your child with DLD? How do you help yourself as a parent navigating this journey? So my hope for everybody watching this, whether live now or the recording in the future, is that they can find that person. Because sometimes even just having one person in your life that you feel like, well, they hear you and they're willing to journey with you, it can make such a huge difference. So I'm grateful for you that I have you built in as a family member. It's
Right
great.
back at you.
Mhm. So we've talked about anxiety that parents often experience. There's
Yeah.
often fear for the future and how they can reframe those thoughts, how they can seek support from therapists themselves. Definitely families navigating DLD and other neurodevelopmental conditions. The parents are more at risk for depression as well. Let's just jump a little bit into the pressure that is so common. You've already mentioned this a little bit, but there's so much pressure to become your child's case manager and to act like their therapist. So can you speak a little bit to the impact of what it's like to carry that? Or do you feel like you've already covered that enough?
Let me think about that for a second.
Hmm.
Um, I think, yeah, there's a pressure to be good parents, especially I'm going to speak to the experience of a
Hmm.
good mom. And I think many, many moms feel like I'm not a good enough mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's really hard, especially when we're navigating the healthcare systems for any reason, specifically this one. There's so many different players when you're getting a diagnosis or when you're navigating the system and trying to figure out how to best help your child. So
Mhm.
you do fall into the role of needing to be able to navigate the system and able to do as much as you can. And I find even early on, SLPs can't work with your children, or that's what I was told. The bit they kind of said we can work with your child a little bit, but the best way we can do anything is to educate you so that you can work with them.
Mhm.
And at the time, to me, that felt, my son was born 2 months before the pandemic, and I was home all day, every day with him.
Mhm.
And that felt um, so isolating and it just felt like so much pressure and so um, not doable. I just
Yeah.
needed help. I felt like I need somebody to actually help me. And that was really, really hard. Um, because there weren't other people talking to him. There weren't other people around to kind of support in that way. Uh, and work on, you know, social skills and emotional skills and all of the things. So yeah, I guess I want to validate how hard that part of it is.
Hmm.
Um, and I want to maybe offer the idea that we don't have to be perfect moms. We can be good enough moms because there is no perfect mom. Every child is going to have struggles. That's what it is to be human. I don't think anybody listening here has ever can say, I've never struggled. That's not
Hmm.
the goal. The goal is to help. You know, sometimes people come into my office and I say, "What's the goal? Why are you coming in here?" And when people answer, "I want to be happy," I think, "Oh boy." Because the happiness is a byproduct. What is really helpful is being able to weather storms.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think maybe we can shift the goal a little bit from being from this message. I need to be the perfect mom. I need to get all my appointments scheduled and lined up perfectly and as quickly as possible, and so that we can figure this out and it'll be done and I'll have done everything right. And instead, let it be enough. I've done enough for today. I've done my best for today. Um,
Hmm.
and um, maybe teach our kids it's okay to have these negative feelings, and I can help you learn how to get through the negative feelings. So that we can come out the other side and you can become more resilient and you can become more confident and capable.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. I like that whole we've done enough piece, giving yourself permission that you don't have to be using language facilitation strategies 24/7. You don't have to always have your child finish their homework, for example. I know you and I talked about that years ago. Like, how many times do I need to use this strategy? Right? So I think it's important too to have a conversation, let's say it's homework, with your child's teacher and just say, this wasn't manageable for my child. So I gave him permission or I gave her permission to do every other question or to just do 2 out of the 6 pages that you sent home because it was just too overwhelming for all of us. And I just want to communicate that with you. And in most instances, teachers want to know that, and then they can work with you to find a
Yeah.
plan, or giving yourself permission that, let's say your child is home with you and they're a younger child, there's no homework. Maybe you're going to say, all right, from this period of time to this period of time, we're going to work on expanding their language, for example. But after that, I'm just going to be their mom. And maybe I'm not going to do any of that like intentional language facilitation work with my child this day because we're just going to focus on our relationship and our emotional connection, and giving yourself permission for that I think is important because different personality types might feel like, well, I'm not even going to start because it's just too hard, or I need to be doing it constantly because th this is so important, and then it
Yeah.
just gets way too overwhelming. So yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah. It
gotta.
can be helpful to sit back ahead of time and say, what is manageable? And maybe even write it down. Have
Mhm.
it written out exactly what is manageable so that you don't go to either extreme. I remember us having a conversation a long time ago about scheduling in 10 minutes of this particular language strategy work. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, we come at it from different
Mhm.
approaches for sure.
I know, I'm laughing remembering that, and I was projecting a little bit of how I would approach it on how I was trying to encourage you to approach it, and then laughing, realizing like that's not you saying something like that's not how I think at all. Like, that didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah, you're so structured. You said like put it in the calendar at this particular time, 10 minutes, and you're done. And I was
Mhm.
like, that overwhelms me so much. I am not that linear in my thinking. I'm more scattered.
Mhm.
I know I'm going to just sit down when the time arises
Yes. Yeah.
and
So
be
knowing.
spontaneous about it.
Exactly. There's no one way that is the way to do it, but figuring out what works for you and talking it out with someone you trust, even if it's somebody who knows nothing about DLD or speech therapy, but it's just your
Yeah.
best friend or your, I don't know, family member.
Yeah.
That can be really helpful just to talk it out and figure, okay, I tried this, it didn't work. Now I'm going to try this approach. I think that could be helpful. Or doing it on your own if that works for your personality too. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the impact on relationships. So I often hear from parents that one parent is taking this much more seriously than the other. So one parent seems to be
Yeah.
quite concerned about their child early on or concerned about the feedback from the school, where the other parent doesn't seem to care as much or doesn't seem to think it's as big a deal. Or maybe they're concerned, but they get paralyzed and they just count on the other partner to take on all the responsibility associated with communicating with the school and scheduling appointments. And this can have a big impact on spouses or on partners. So, do you have any general thoughts on
On
that, or do you want me to give
relationships.
you a specific question?
Um, yeah, I think the biggest impact would be on the relationship between the
Mhm.
partners, right?
Yeah.
Um, do I have any thoughts about it? I think anything can be that um, in a relationship, can act in that way in a relationship where one person takes it on and the other doesn't think it's a big deal, or um, so on and so forth. I think, yeah, I think you can. I guess maybe what is a specific question that you're wondering about? Like, are the
Yeah,
strategies
I
for
have one.
couples or?
I have one for you. So first
Oh boy.
question I would ask is, what do you think could help when one parent feels like they're carrying most of the load? How can they communicate that with their spouse or their partner without blaming them or without shaming them? What are some strategies to have this? This is what I learned in therapy with my husband. When you have an issue, you're both sitting on the couch. Do you want the issue to be between you on the couch so you can't see each other? Or do you want to put it in front of you so you're both kind of looking at it and figuring out how to handle it together? So, how
Well,
can,
that's a good visual.
yeah, it's stuck with me. So, how can you communicate so that you could both get on the same page with that, especially if you've kind of tried before and you feel like you're talking to a brick wall? Do you have any
Yeah,
specific strategies for
that's a
communication?
great question. I think don't go in a moment of
Mm,
anger and desperation and feeling isolated. You get the email from the person and it feels belittling or whatever. You don't feel understood. You feel overwhelmed and stressed. Don't go running to your partner and say, "You aren't helping me with."
yes.
You need to help me. You haven't picked up the slack.
Hmm.
That's not going to be helpful.
Hmm.
Um, I would say in a moment when you're just calm on a weekend or an evening, you haven't been triggered by anything. You've thought it through that this is a problem dynamic for you and that you need it to change.
Hmm.
And I would say approach your partner and tell them that you need to set the stage, don't go right into it. Say, there's something that's been on my mind that I want you to take really seriously and I want to talk to you about it. Do you mind if we have a conversation? And you could say right now, if that's the moment, if
Hmm.
nobody's doing anything, or you could say, is there a good time that we could schedule it in?
Ooh, that's good.
And then that way they don't feel accused. This is about something that you're bringing up. And then when the time comes that you do sit down and talk about it, and I would suggest, if they're sitting at the computer and you come up and say this, I would suggest you don't then just, if they say, oh, okay, don't just sit down while they're at the computer and do it. Relocate. Go somewhere that you haven't is not the place where you've now interrupted what they're doing, or if that's the case. Start somewhere fresh.
Mm,
Um, So you're both, you set it up, you both sit down. They know that this is important to you. You've set the stage for that. So it's not going to be belittled, hopefully. And then I think stick with language that or sentences that start with I think, I feel, I am.
Mm,
Um, you want to talk about your experience, not about what they've done wrong. Blaming is not easy to approach for someone, for your partner. It's not going to be collaborative. It's putting them immediately on the defensive.
mhm,
So if you really want to collaborate, talk about your experience. Don't start with when you do this, I feel this way. Say, I feel this way. I've noticed that comes up in this situation.
mm,
Um, so you're noticing and commenting on your experience. Um, I'm trying to think of an example. So if I were to sit down and talk to my husband about something DLD related with my son, I'll set the stage, we're ready to have our talk, we sit down and I might say, I, I've noticed that I feel alone when I hear our son um, m make a mistake that we're really consciously working on in his language. And for example, for a long time with my son, he couldn't get the S blends. And so we learned the strategy of stop if we were saying stop. So we had that little arm movement and we all knew about it. So I might say, I notice I feel really alone and maybe disappointed and even sometimes frustrated when he's not getting the S blend and you're playing with him and you don't correct him. I need support in this. Is that's and maybe just leave it there. Maybe don't keep talking about it. Don't keep oh, and then this example and maybe give one.
yeah,
Um
that's very good, very good. Just one, because we could go on and on and on.
Yeah, yeah. So keep it short and keep it to my experience and trust that your partner wants to be supportive and collaborative. And if you keep it simple, trust that they're going to jump in and say, I want to be part of the team. I
Mm,
want to do better. I want to, maybe they'll say, can you remind me more? I don't know.
mm,
Some partners might. And that's something to figure out between the two of you. Some people might say, I don't want to have to. Other people might say, sure, no problem.
mhm.
And I would, yeah, just try to ask yourself, what do I really want from the conversation before you have it? What am I hoping to get?
Okay, this is maybe a tricky one, but what do you do if they say, "I don't want to have to help with this"? How can you how can you handle that? What do you do? That's a tough question.
It's a good question. I have an emotional reaction to it.
Mm, mhm,
I don't want to have to. I mean, it's not one I can speak to too much because it's going to have to be about the relationship, and that's not a relationship that is, or how do I say this? It's people have different relationships. Maybe that is the agreement between the two parents that one of them handles child stuff and one of them handles being the breadwinner. I don't know.
mhm, mm.
So
Fixing the
it does
car.
depend on,
Yeah.
yeah, it depends on the relationship that has been agreed on. And if the relationship hasn't been agreed on and those roles aren't defined, but it's still the dynamic that one partner wants,
Mhm.
that's going to be trickier. That's going to take a lot more work to figure out. And I would say go to therapy.
Go to therapy. That's a good one. That's a good one. And in the meantime, maybe you can find a grandparent who's able to come once a week and use some strategies with the child so that you don't feel like you're the only one. Or maybe you can
Oh, yeah,
find an
absolutely.
auntie or something like that, because I feel
Yeah.
for so many parents that are overwhelmed, but it's so important, I think, to go to therapy because there's so much research out there, right? Not to mention just anecdotal evidence that it's very hard to co-parent a child with a challenge, right? There's just that much more stress. And when one parent feels like they're doing it mostly alone, they need help and they need support. So finding somebody else in the short term, if needed, maybe that could help too. Just comes into
Yeah.
my mind.
Yeah, in couples therapy, we talk about having a third in the relationship. You know,
Oh.
it can be addiction, can be the third that enters into all the relation dynamics. It can be a child with health problems,
Mm.
and it can be really hard to navigate that.
Thank you so much. That's really, really good food for thought. Let's shift a little bit into how we can support our children emotionally when they're melting down. So we had one parent send in a question about that. How do I help my child when they're in a meltdown and they're struggling with communication? So I'm wondering if you're going to say back up and help them when they are regulated. I don't know, but let's see what you say. How do you approach that if your child's having a lot of meltdowns? And you know that at least part of it is because of their frustration with communication challenges.
I will just say I'm not a child therapist.
Mm,
So I'm not an expert in that, but I can certainly speak to myself as a parent. And I tell my kids all the time, I teach adults about emotions.
mm,
Um, I I think, yeah, kids are all different. Meltdowns can have different triggers. I certainly know one of my children has some sensory things that I've really noticed contribute to meltdowns. Loud noises or um, bright lights can be really hard.
mhm,
So no, maybe I think you're right. Teaching strategies ahead of time when you're calmer is great, and modeling is great, and noticing what are the triggers can help you feel more in control. Because if you can start to identify the triggers, then you can hopefully stop uh, start to get earlier and earlier at stopping them before they start.
mhm,
Um, so if you have to write it down or keep, if it, if you can keep track in your head, just notice what are the triggers that cause the meltdowns in the first place. And then if you are in a full-blown meltdown, start to notice what helps.
mhm,
So for my daughter, I know some people will say firm boundaries are important for kids. And I have found, and I like that a lot, but I found it doesn't work well with her.
mm,
So I tend to be a lot more affectionate, and I tend to narrate what I think I'm understanding from them.
mm,
And I find when they feel understood, it really changes everything, actually, for both of my kids. Even if my oldest would fall and hurt himself, I found if I would narrate, oh, you tripped over that rock and then you fell down and then you hurt your knee and you started to cry and then I scooped you up into my arms and I cuddled you and I comforted you, he would listen. He would stop
mhm,
crying. So that, I mean, that's not a meltdown, but it was the same thing for meltdowns. And I find, respectfully and carefully, I try to offer physical affection.
mhm,
I try to offer my words as understanding about what is going on for them,
mhm,
so that they feel understood. And if you get it wrong, most people will correct you. So even if you're getting it wrong, it shouldn't, you're still moving toward the goal of them being understood, because then they'll want to correct you. That's not it.
mhm,
No, let me tell you what it is.
mhm.
Um, and if they don't offer what it is, you keep trying until you figure it out. Um, what other strategies do I use when they're melting down? Um, yeah, I think I tend to be firm if I need to, and as gentle as possible.
That's good. What do you think about, say, role playing with toys? So when they are calm, having Spider-Man and I don't know, do people even have Care Bears these days? I don't know, a doll or something like this. Um, act out. Here's my two toys.
Mhm.
Acting out a dialogue back and forth about handling a challenging situation, or this is how I felt when you
Yeah,
blah blah blah, whatever it was. Do you think that's effective for some kids?
absolutely. I think that's super effective. Yeah, I think that's a really, really great strategy.
Mm,
Or afterward, if you're at a point where they're calm enough that you can debrief, maybe realizing that in the middle of a meltdown is not a teaching moment time.
mhm,
You can debrief after, and some kids like to draw it out depending on their age. Some kids like to act it out with toys. For sure, those are really great strategies. Um,
I love what you said. In the middle of it, it is not a teaching moment.
yeah,
But debriefing later, that's really important, I think, when kids are open to it. And sometimes we might try and they just shut it down because they're not ready, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't try
yeah,
again another
yeah.
time.
Oh, absolutely. It's so important. And if there's been a rupture between the two of you, finding a way to repair it helps
Mm,
build trust in your relationship. I think it's also worth mentioning, I said be firm but gentle. I don't mean keep hugging your child if they're hitting you necessarily. You don't having boundaries about, I like to use the words, I don't let people treat me that way.
mm,
I find I don't want them to let other people treat them in a way that is not respectful. I don't let my kids treat me that way, or I don't let people talk to me that way.
mhm.
I want them to be able to articulate those boundaries when they're adults, and so I enforce them with my kids.
So what does that look like practically? Because that's so important. That's such a good point. If you're hugging them and they start hitting you, you say, I don't let people do that. Do you then set them on the floor and you move your body away from them? Or what does that look like if they just keep on hitting you?
Yeah, I might narrate what I'm doing. I don't let
Okay.
people hit me or treat me that way. I'm
Mhm,
going to put you on the floor, or I'm going to put you on the couch, and I'm going to move my body over here so that you cannot hit me.
mhm.
And I want you to know that I'm ready for a cuddle when you are ready.
Mm, mm.
So you're also being respectful about the boundaries that they're setting. They don't want to cuddle. So that's
Mhm.
okay. They don't have to have a cuddle when you're ready. You can wait till they're ready.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. And then debriefing later if they're open to it
Yeah.
on what went well and and maybe what they would have preferred. Some kids have that awareness that, oh, I wish you would have tried this. Some kids aren't there yet, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But getting the conversation going and opening that door that it's okay for us to talk about these kinds of things, that it's a safe place for us to talk about these
Yeah.
kinds of things. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
I love you modeling that. Anything else you wanted to add there, or can we shift gears to self-esteem?
Um, I had a thought. Is it still in my brain? I don't know. Um,
My bad. Take a second.
no, no, not at
I
all.
have a drink of water. You take a second to think.
Okay. I think, what was my thought about? Debriefing with kids, and maybe going first to model how to do that. So you are the one that approaches them. You're the one that starts the conversation, and you could start by saying something like, I felt really, maybe the conflict was I asked you to put away your toys and you wouldn't put them away. And so you had them, and I said, no, you need to put them away. And you had a meltdown. So
Mhm,
I might say, I felt really worried when you wouldn't do what you were told. Um, and you started to scream and yell, or maybe not worried. I felt really um, disappointed. Um, and it's important for me to know that you'll do what you're told because It's my job. I'm your mom, and it's my job to keep you safe. And if I see, you know, a car coming on the road, I need to know that you're going to listen when I tell you no. I need you to know there's reasons why you have to do what you're told. And that might be one reason that they can really latch on to is
Mm-hmm.
safety.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think, and then talking about, and then when you hit me, I that hurt my feelings. I felt hurt that you thought it was okay to hit me. I'm I'm a person that matters, and I don't let people hit me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt really sad and hurt when you did that, and I want to make it okay between you and I now. And then you can be curious, what did you feel when I told you to put your toys away?
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't have the emotional language yet, which they might not, um, you could offer it. Did you feel angry? Did you feel frustrated? Did you feel whatever it may be because you didn't want to? And then I would say, it's okay to not want to. And sometimes, even when you don't want to, you still need to.
Mm-hmm.
Validating that they can have that feeling. You can tolerate that they have that feeling, and they can have that feeling and still do the thing. They can hold
Mm-hmm.
both.
That's good. That's really good. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think even if you Google, you mentioned not necessarily having the emotional language. I'm thinking of getting pictures with maybe like 6 or 12 emojis on a paper, and each different face has the name of a different emotion associated with it or
Yeah,
zones of regulation. There's so many
yeah,
fantastic visuals. So
yeah,
I
for
often tell
sure.
parents to print one of those out and put them on the fridge. And if the child doesn't know the word, maybe they can point to the face that matches with the feeling that they have, and then you can
Yeah,
reinforce what that word is. So I think that's really, really good advice. And we would modify it, right? Because the examples that we're using are more for maybe like kindergarten, early elementary aged kids.
yeah,
But these same strategies can apply, just said a little bit differently, for a 12-year-old or for a 16-year-old. I truly believe
yeah,
it's never too late to try to repair challenges and develop these kinds of skills and experiences with your child, whether they're 4, whether they're 14, whether they're 24, right? We can always
yeah.
grow and we can always improve our relationships. And sometimes we might need to be really respectful that they're not ready, or that the way that we're trying might not necessarily resonate with them. But I think that not giving up and continuing to be vulnerable, at least yourself, is something that we can continue to do.
Yeah, and I think a lot of adults don't have the emotional language either. So go print off a graphic of a feelings wheel.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it'll show the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary emotions, and practice that on yourself, all through your day. Ask yourself, what do I feel right now? What do I feel right now? And practice naming your emotions so that you can help your kids with it.
Hmm. Hmm. And I always give this example of, say, burning dinner, for example. When you
I've
burn
never
your
done that.
dinner, yeah, I've never done that either, but when you burn dinner, or when something goes wrong in the house, speaking out, this is how I feel. This is the regulation technique I'm going to use. I'm going to take 3 deep breaths, or I'm going to whatever it is that you do, that can be
Yeah,
so helpful. And we all stub our toes, or at least I do, or walk into the door frame every day, right? Something goes wrong every
yeah.
day. And so we can always model for our kids how we handle that. And it can, even though it might feel to you like this is doing nothing, you are slowly building that foundation for
You're
your
modeling,
child.
and you can ask them for help.
Mhm.
A few years ago, I was following a big truck in the middle of winter, and a huge piece of ice fell off the truck.
Ooh,
And I was so scared. And I swerved. I was on I think a 5-lane highway. I
mm,
swerved without looking, and luckily we didn't get in an accident, but
yeah.
it was really scary. And I said out loud to my kids, we almost got hit by a piece of ice, and I feel really scared. Can you guys help me do my deep breaths? And
Wow.
that had such an impact. We talked about it for years after.
Wow.
Remember that time you helped Mama uh, do her deep breaths. And that helped.
Mhm.
Then because they were part of it and they were in the helper role, they felt really like, I know how to do this.
Mm.
And I would
Empowered.
reference it later on. Remember that time you helped me? Let me help you this time. Let's do our deep breaths.
Mm.
And so
Partnership.
yeah, the role reversal can also be really helpful.
Fantastic. Okay, we had a really good question come in. So I think we should jump over to the question and then
Okay.
we might just have to wrap this up here. But this one, I've heard it a lot. It's super important. And the parent asked, how do you handle the guilt around your other kids when so
Oh,
much of your
yeah.
time and energy goes to your child with DLD, the appointments, the therapy, the advocating? And you can feel your other children are getting the leftover version of you. So that was the first part of it. And then
Mhm.
I'll just read the next part too, and then we can decide if we want to address a certain part of it or whatever.
Okay.
So then they said, what do you do when your other kids start to resent it or even resent their sibling? I've caught comments or a look, and you realize they feel like the DLD takes up all the air in the house. And part of you as a parent understands it, but part of you feels heartbroken by that. Have either of us experienced anything related to this? And like, what do you do?
I will say absolutely that is the case in my house right now a little bit. My daughter with selective mutism. I've just been working so hard on trying to get her help, and she also has hearing
Loss,
problems. So
temporary hearing loss. Yeah.
yeah, hearing loss. So I've been just working and having dead end after dead end with specialists. So that's been taking up so much space for me. And because, at school she has selective mutism, and both of my kids are in kindergarten, I ask her brother sometimes to, can you talk to Freya at recess? Or can you reach out to her when you see her at school? And um, then I've been trying to be more understanding when she comes home of the big feelings that come out. And she has some sensory issues. So, when her brother comes in, he wants to be loud or he wants to wrestle or he wants to be silly. And she has a really hard time with it. So I feel like I'm often asking him to tone it down or to um, uh, not do what he wants to do, and that's really hard, or to give his attention to caring for her. And I try to do it carefully, but I do it sometimes. And I find I'm noticing that's really a hard dynamic for him. He's only 6. So I have to, I'm starting to wonder, where is the line? Because her issues are not his issues,
Yeah.
but
And he's
they
only
they
6,
do come
right?
up in our family
Mhm.
dynamic. He wants to be really loud in a moment, and she that makes her have a meltdown. Um, or he wants to wrestle, and he might gently touch her, or play tag, and she starts screaming because she didn't like being touched. That's really hard. So I've told him that he can always ask for one-on-one time with me. It's
Mhm.
hard to give it. It's
Mhm.
really, really hard to give it. But I try to make an effort to track that. So if he asks in a moment when I'm making supper, my husband isn't home, and I really cannot stop everything and give him one-on-one time, I keep track in my mind so that I can at a later time. And so I want him to always be able to say that to me.
Mhm.
Um, and the other thing I guess I keep in mind is that I want to have a balance. It does have to be that way somewhat, but it doesn't mean that everything goes into the problem of the year or the problem of the time. Um, so maybe there's times when I want to be helping my daughter in some sort of way, whether it's emailing or phoning or working on a strategy with her. And that's not the most, it feels like that's the priority all the time, but now I'm starting to scale it back and realize it can't be the priority all the time.
Mm,
My son, who is doing really well right now, still needs me, and that needs to be a priority too. And so sometimes, even when I feel like I should, anytime there's a should, I flag it. If I should be doing that, um, maybe what I'm actually going to choose is something different because I'm choosing that that's the priority.
I think that's fantastic. I know in my family too, I've got 4 kids in school, and I've definitely heard from older siblings saying, "Why are you always spending this time with their younger brother?" Or "How come he gets this and I don't get this?" Or even today, "How come you're making his sandwich and you didn't make mine?" And I had to remind my daughter, listen, when you were in grade 1, I made your sandwich too. But one thing that I wanted to mention too is scheduling dates with the
One
other
on one.
children, right? So that they can see on the calendar, wow, next week on Saturday, mom and I are going to go for a walk in the park, just the two of us, or we're going to go have waffles together, or whatever it ends up being, knowing that that's coming and that they can count on it and that it's written on the calendar. That can be really helpful. And I'm speaking to myself here. I know it's great for my family, so I should. Now I'm hearing I should.
I
I want,
choose.
yes, I choose to prioritize having that on my calendar and acknowledging it's hard to wait, or it's true that right now they're getting this attention and it doesn't feel like it's equal, but here's part of the reason why they're getting this attention. And I know we've actually got an animated podcast episode coming out soon about the impact on a sibling. And this was inspired by an incredible family in Australia who the younger sister feels like she had to spend her birthday in a waiting room, I think, recently.
Hmm.
And she doesn't understand why her big sister has to ask multiple times how to play the game. I already answered that question. And so sometimes too, using materials showing what it's like to live life with DLD. Sometimes that can be really helpful too, to help them understand, oh, the reason that they're getting this is because they need this, and I don't necessarily need this. Oh, that's what it's like for them to live their life with DLD. Sometimes it helps to build up that empathy. But again, like you said, finding the balance that it's not just we need to teach them to empathize all the time. I love what you said about sometimes the priority is actually going to be the neurotypical sibling or the sibling who doesn't have that particular challenge, even though it feels like it's more pressing to schedule this appointment or use this strategy. Maybe the child with DLD is not going to do their homework this day because it's so important to provide that for the
Yeah.
other sibling. Yeah. Okay, I'm noticing we're past the hour here. Michaela, do you I did it. I always call her a nickname and I'm trying to use her actual official name. Michaela, do you have anything you would like to leave parents with? We didn't have a chance to go through all the questions on our list. So if there was like one, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but if there was one takeaway, or is this question too hard?
No,
Kind of hard.
it's not
No?
too hard.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'm good at answering questions.
I'm projecting
Um,
again.
I think I just want to maybe we've talked about a lot of challenges,
Hmm.
and I just want to highlight the uplifting part. We get to see kids do really hard things and make leaps that might be this big, but feel this, where are my hands? This
Hmm.
big.
Hmm.
And I think that noticing those special and exciting times and celebrating them is just a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I also just want to maybe quickly mention how, um, yeah, I'm so glad you have this group,
Hmm.
Empowered DLD, um, that I know the name of. Um, uh, because you hadn't started it when I was going through a lot of my struggles, and it is just, I'm so happy that It's out there. I love the books. The books are for kids to see themselves represented is just so special and so um, powerful, I think. I have a neighbor whose child has DLD, and I gave her one of your books, and she was just so grateful. It's so nice to see yourself represented, and that's such a so glad that there's tools and there's groups and there's supports for going through this.
I love that. And I'm catching myself too when you said, I'm good at answering questions. That's not too hard. Like, so often as loving people, we want to protect the people in our family. Like, oh, I hope I didn't make this too difficult for you. Or, oh, I hope you're not in a challenge. And I'm doing it to my own sister. So I love that you mentioned too celebrating the strengths. And like when I think of you watching the video of your son from 2.5 years ago and
Yeah,
then reflecting on where he is now and that wow he's done so many hard things and look at how much stronger he is because of it. It can be mind-boggling to think that's how he talked not that long
yeah,
ago. And I like to remind parents too, if you're feeling fearful, how's he ever going to do in the future? Or is my child going to be able to get a job? Are they going to be able to be in a romantic relationship? Think about where they were and think about where they are now and know that they will continue to grow and they will continue to progress. So I guess I wanted to give a takeaway message too, and that's mine. That's mine. Well, Michaela, thank you so much. This was a fantastic conversation. I feel like we should do it again. You're a
yeah.
natural, and I hope that this is really helpful to a lot of parents.
Oh, I hope so.
Mm,
Thanks for having me.
thank you.
Oh, okay.
I think,
Sorry, give me
Tamisha,
one
will you
second.
pause?
Yeah, one second.
Okay, she's there.
Is it done?
I think she's just paused.